All right. You've seen this before. Not a big deal. All right. But this is like an overview of VLANs or review of VLANs. Not VLANs, LANs. Okay. So again, we're looking at different types of LANs, but we're looking basically, when we talk about Ethernet, Ethernet is the standard. Just like we were talking about the TCP/IP model, the OSI model, the Cisco 3.0 model. Well, Ethernet in itself is a standard, and it has its guidelines, right, on how far apart we need to put the devices, what type of cabling we should use. IEEE, though, they're the ones that have those. They have those guidelines as well. All right, but Ethernet tells us all that. If it's going to be a straight through, it's going to be a crossover. Are we going to, if you're using wireless, well, then it needs to be so far apart depending on the type of frequency that you're using. So, and that will be an 802.11, either A, B, N, whatever it is that you're using. Okay, that is what Ethernet tells us. That's why when we're developing, where there is a common home network or a common enterprise network, which we're going to break these down in detail, okay, Ethernet is the one that encompasses the guidelines for us to create this type of network, okay? That's what Ethernet is. That's, again, an overview of what Ethernet is. Ethernet is a technology, is a type of standard that we use. That's why you see they say, oh, we're an Ethernet network, we have ARP. Okay, we're still going to be an Ethernet network in IPv6, but not with IPv6, there is no ARP. Okay, but it's an Ethernet network nonetheless. Unless you're going to something like Token Ring to make the comparison. Token Ring, completely different standard, uses a completely different access method, where here we have CSMA CD, right? Collision, carrier sense, multiple access collision detection. In Token Ring, we have token passing, right? There's a little token. You can only talk when you have the token. It flows in one direction if you're using the IBM standard. It flows in the other direction if you're using the IEEE 802.5, right? That's Token Ring. Token Ring is very slow versus Ethernet that goes 100 gigabit speeds. I mean, we have Ethernet over WANs now that are going, terabytes. It's completely different. But Ethernet is a governing body. Ethernet is the standard that we use, or the guidelines that we use to create these type of networks. You just don't say, hey, I want to create a network. Yeah, what do you need? Oh, I think I need a switch and give me a router too, And but you need to know the type of cabling and all other stuff. And that's, well, we'll be getting into in the course, of course. But that's what this is. So I'm showing you this so you understand that this is what governs when you're creating a network. Now we're going to get into the details of a SOHO. We're going to get into the details of an enterprise network. As far as what you see here, we'll use the same labs, right? Why reinvent the wheel? Okay, so we'll get into those details right now. So, but just to let you know that what Ethernet really is, it's just a standard, a guideline for us to follow. See you in the next. All right, welcome back. Here we are in our small office, home office network. You've seen this before. Now we're gonna, you can see I zoomed into it. So we're gonna get into a little bit more detail of it. Everybody today, not everybody, but most of everybody, has some sort of home office. All right. If you don't have a home office, you at least have a wireless router in your home, so people can have access to the internet through their laptops, their phones, whatever the case may be. I remember way back, let's say 4 years, 5 years ago, I will have my router and my God, everybody in my family, my wife, my daughters, my mother-in-law, her daughter, her other daughter, her daughter's daughter, everybody and their mother who will come to my house, they will have internet access through my wireless network. All right, so that wasn't an office per se, but at least I had that where they have access to the internet. Today we have smart TVs, right? In a home, if you have a smart TV, you don't need a cable, right? You can have Netflix, you can have Hulu, you can have all these YouTube. You have all these different things with the smart TVs if you have wireless connectivity. So wireless in a home office is really essential because you want the ease of use or the capability of being in your bedroom or your study room, like I have here, right? The bedroom or the study room or by the pool or wherever, and you want to be able to access what you need to access. But if you are using your house as an office, definitely you may have now a switch because you may not just want to connect your wireless router to a switch that connects to the modem slash router that's going to take you out to the internet. But you may want to start now. You may remember there's a home office, so it's completely different. But you may want to VLAN things, or you may just want to attach other devices, straight wired devices to the switch, so they don't take up the bandwidth in your WAN. That's one thing you need to consider. All right, that's one thing you need to consider when you are creating, whether it's a home or enterprise. If you're gonna have wireless, especially in the home, the kids, they're gonna be on all these social media sites, right? They say they're doing their homework, but they're not. They're on social media sites, all right? They're looking at downloading their favorite song lyrics or whatever the case may be, and you're trying to do your work and you're wondering why your wireless printer that we don't have here, but our wireless printer can't print or it's taking forever to print. And it's because you have all these people, her friends, his friends, whatever, they're on your wireless network. You're trying to do your job and you can't because you have them all wireless. So what you can do is make sure that not everybody has to be wireless. You can have a wired printer, okay? Or you have, let's say you have a server. Let's say you've gone beyond that point. You have a wired server instead of being a wireless server. All right, so not necessarily, or have both options where if you unplug, you immediately go to the wireless network. If you plug in, you're then obviously wired, okay? But like in here, switches themselves, if we take a look at a switch, and let me see if I can do this with the finger. Wow, it's working. Look at that. My finger is really on point. All right. So if you look at the switch, there's really nothing that you need to do to make it work. I'm going to do enable, I'll get out the way so you can see, so you don't tell me, Laz, move out the way. Show start. Okay, you can see that there's no startup config present. None whatsoever. I didn't configure anything on this switch. A switch doesn't need a configuration to work. The only reason you would configure a switch is because you want added functionality. You want to create VLANs, right? You want to do switch port security, whatever the case may be, or you want to manage the switch remotely, whatever it is. All right, but a switch itself does not need to be configured for it to work. It's working already. Now, this guy, we're very familiar with this one. This is our Linksys wireless router, where you can see, well, can you see it here? Oh, I have to go down here, sorry. You can see here that the IP address of the router is 0.1, and I've disabled DHCP. That's one of the things that you may want to do. You want to disable the DHCP just for the simple fact that you don't want nobody getting an IP address. You want to be able to manage, it's not that big of a network, you want to manage the IP addresses yourself. You just don't want anybody to show up and get it. Before I did it, before I just left it there on, gave everybody, the whole family, the passwords, as soon as they walk into my house, or if they're near my house, they can go ahead and from the driveway, they can get online, okay? But there's many things that you can do, all right, where let's say you go to the wireless portion of it and you go to the wireless security, all right, boom, there you go. And you see I don't have it even enabled, all right, where I actually do WPA2 personal, not enterprise, right? We're in a home office. I'm not gonna have a radius server in here, but some people do, some people do. But you would do some type of security. I don't have any security. This is the lab. You can do wireless MAC filtering. I did do that. I did do MAC filtering where I will get everybody's MAC address and put them in there. Think about living in an apartment building. If you have a wireless thing, you want to make sure that nobody's picking up your wireless. You want to do MAC filtering. You want to have an SSID. Remember, security is not just doing one thing. It's doing layers of different types of security that people will need to then try and bypass those different layers, okay? So there are many things you can do, but here we just basically, just to make it work, just the basic, let me go to setup. I just disable the ACP, and then I use the default SSID, and boom, it automatically connected. And I myself put the IP addresses on the laptops. The router in this case, obviously that will be the modem slash router. Here, the fast Ethernet 00, I put it myself. Now you can have, if DHCP is enabled, you can have it where it can pick up the ACP on the private side automatically. All right, or you put it in yourself, 192.168.0.254, and then it connects to that. That will be the gateway for everybody to get out. And then you see this public IP address right here. That would be the one on this side to take you out to the internet. But that's the only configuration that you're going to see on this particular router. I don't have any other configuration on that. So a Soho LAN, it could be very, complex. It depends how far you want to take it. But for the most part, you're going to have just laptops or desktops, whether they're wired or wireless. I have a wireless printer. That way I can print from wherever I need to. It's not wired. There's not that many people going to be on the wireless network. Now, of course, when you're off, you're not doing nothing on your laptops. You have your smart TVs, then they connect to the wireless. So don't have your smart TVs on while you're trying to do work. If you're working from home, you still got to stay disciplined and you have your little time that you do your things. But a small office, home office network is not a downgrade, but a smaller version of an enterprise network or medium grade network where it doesn't need all that sophisticated equipment or that much configuration. Now, you don't see a firewall here. You should put a firewall somewhere in here, whether it be software, which I don't recommend. Hardware will be the best way to go, but it all depends on your budget. Okay, so hardware firewall, they're not that expensive. Small ones for a small office. You can get a hardware firewall put in there, configure some security on the routers, on the switches, and if you can on this particular router, remember, this is the one that's connecting you out to the internet, which is your provider. Okay, but that's it when it comes to that. And then if you're going to take it a step further, I know at one point I had a server in the house, and then I created a domain, and then I created users, and then you start creating GPOs and all these different things, group policy objects, what they can access or they can't. But again, that's an overkill for Soho, for an office that you're working from home. You don't have to get that elaborate. I've seen people with Cisco IP phones, and hey, that's fine and dandy. Okay, you could be a lawyer working from home, and you want the latest and greatest types of phones and what have you, and you want to do that. You can do that as well. You can have an IP phone connected to your switch and so forth, right? You can connect it to your computer, to the switch, however it is that you want to do it, okay? But this is your small office, home office. It is an Ethernet network, so it will fall under the Ethernet guidelines that you must follow. I'll see you in the next one. All right, so now we're going to look at, welcome back by the way, we're going to look at a common enterprise LAN. Now here, you can see this is the third floor, the second floor, the first floor. It was a small building. All right, and we have our desktop layer. Oh, look at that. We have our distribution, which work down together. We have our core, right, and then goes out. Before I get into this, before I get into explaining what I did in here, all right, I want to make a little bit of a comment, which Cisco's not putting in their certifications anymore, but it's something that you should know, because in a business, all right, whatever it is, a school, a bank, whatever, okay, you're going to have wiring closets. Okay, there's a thing called MDFs, main distribution facilities, and IDFs, intermediate distribution facilities. So it could be that the one on the first floor, that's where your MDF is. What does an MDF hold? It holds all your core switches, your servers, your routers, okay? And then every other floor, or it could be every floor, but normally it's every other floor, will have an IDF, which will have just your access layer switches, okay? or connections to those particular switches, because we have a switch on every floor. So connections to those switches, and depending how large of a network you have, you can have one MDF with multiple 3, 4, 5 IDFs, okay? Because your MDF is always going to be nearest and what we call the POP, the point of presence, where you're closest to the internet, okay? So you're not being tested on that, but this is something that I think you should know, because if you walk into an interview and have never heard of wiring closets, and all of a sudden you're looking at this rack full of machines, because you've seen pictures, if you've never been in a network before, you've seen pictures of racks and all these things lighting up inside the rack. Well, those are the switches and the routers and the servers and all that, because they have rack servers and everything is connected there. All right, so again, now, believe me, I've walked into certain buildings that you look at the wiring closet and it really looks like a cobweb, all right, like a spider web, I'll say it that way, okay? Because you don't know what's running where. That's why these standards come out, all right? If all these cables you see here, it's really not like that. It may be like this from here, from switch to switch, 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 but this switch, this router, all right, let's say as an example, as in a campus, this would be, let's say the first floor, second floor, third floor, okay? This switch, let's say these switches are in each floor, this switch would be residing inside a closet. And then all these cables will run to a patch panel, that from the patch panel, they go connected to the switch. Then the switch will go connected to the router and then out to the internet, okay? That's how it would be. That's how it would be. And there you can see there's no redundancy here. None, zero. And that's normally how every network is. Well, at the end of each point of these cables, right, from here to here, remember, patch panel going to the switch, you need to label those cables. And we'll talk about cabling in a bit, okay? But you need to label those things on either side. So you know, hey, this cable right here is going to the third floor, and it's connected to this port on the third floor, but whatever, you name it. So if you have to go tone it, okay, or you're checking to see if the cables are all lined up together, right, checking the connectivity of it, you need to make sure that you know which ones you're actually fixing or you're using, okay? Because if something happens, you need to know what's going on. And if you have a spider web of cables, you don't, and unfortunately, I'm going to say 7 out of 10 times, that's usually the case, all right? And I've seen horrors out there where you're like, okay, you might as well just rip out all the cables and do it yourself. I've gone to nursing homes to do networks, and I've seen a mixture of Cat 5, Cat 6, and I'm like, okay, what's what? Nothing's labeled. No, you have to actually tone everything out to see where everything is going. So it's not the cabling. People take it for granted, but it's really very important. That's one of the first things you're going to do. You're going to cable everything out. You're going to make sure those cables are properly punched down, that those connectors are properly plugged in, all that stuff. So then the networking, the configuration part, that's the easy stuff. That's where you get to sit down and configure everything you have to do, okay? So cabling, and you're going to the ceiling, all craziness. But anyway, so basically what I did on each switch is the following. Let's bring this up. Oh, look, my finger doesn't want to work now. Okay. Let's go ahead and I'll get out of the way so you can see it. So you don't say, Laz, man, you're always in the way. Okay, so let's open this up. I'm just opening it up now. Okay, don't go crazy on me. All right, enable, show start, and just show you this right here. We have the host name of it, obviously, so we know which switch belongs to which department. You can see there's a range of ports. It's going to be 1 through 15. We have assigned the VLAN to it. All right, we did port security on it. As you can see, you have the sticky command on there. We have a violation of just 1, meaning if somebody tries to plug in another computer, that port's going down. We disabled spanning tree on there. So this is things that you would do on an enterprise network. Okay, you can see it's all the same thing all the way down to port 15, because in port 16, 17, there's nothing else. Okay, and did I do anything else down here? No, I didn't do anything else. I didn't give it an IP address, which is something that you should do. Okay. You should give your switch, Okay then. You should give your switch an IP address and a default gateway, something that you should do on an enterprise LAN. But basically, that's what I did. I also show VTP status and start learning these commands, even though you'll have a little document that's going to give you all these commands. Let's bring this up to the top so you can see it better. All right, there is a domain name. So all my switches belong to a particular domain. Has nothing to do with DNS, okay? And these access switches, right? The access layer switches, the desktop layer switches, are clients. That's the operating mode of that particular switch, all right? They're clients. Where the core switch is going to be my server, all right? Even though you saw that show VLAN, you saw that VLAN 30, all right? That's where all my ports are at right here. You can see them right here. All right, that's where all my ports are at. These came down because I created the VLANs on the core switch. But I didn't assign them. I created them. All right, created a domain. And then I trunked the ports and it came down. How do I know that my ports are trunked? Control C. Put some space between us here, showing trunk. And you're going to see that these are dynamically trunked. All right, you can see port 24 is dynamically trunked auto, okay? And you can see trunking, all right? But it's 802 on Q, 802 on Q. If you have a layer 3 switch, you have the option of using ISL 802 on Q. Why you would use ISL, I don't know. Okay, anyway, the same thing are on these two switches. The core switch, I told you, is a different type of configuration. Let's open this up so you can see it. And again, this is not even, this is like a tiny bit of the things that you would do in an enterprise. Let's do show VLAN so you can see what I was talking about. You can see that I have the 3 VLANs right there, but there's no ports assigned to them. None. 0 ports assigned to VLANs 10, 20, and 30. I didn't assign any ports to them. Okay. Here, if I do show VTP, stat or status, okay, that's where you see that, hey, it's a server. That's the operating mode. I left that one as a server, and it is Cisco. But you see that I have given no IP addresses to the switch whatsoever, okay, which you are going to do. You need to give it SSH access. You need to give it an IP address. You need to give it a default gateway so you can access it remotely, all right, as per Cisco. And where is my mouse? There it is. And then showing trunk. Okay. And if you look at this one, it doesn't say the letter N like it was dynamically. Now it's on, not auto. And you can see that here we have the 802.1Q that's on. And I trunked those ports. And remember, when you have VLANs other than the native or administrative VLANs, you must trunk your ports for those VLANs to get across, because those VLANs do not have a PVID. They have to be tagged. And when we get to the switching portion of it, you'll learn all that stuff. And obviously in the router, I have sub-interfaces in the router, and each sub-interface will contain the IP address and gateway for each of these, one of these PCs, and then an IP address to get to the outside and then to the web server. So you can see that in an enterprise LAN, there's a lot more work that needs to be put into it, whether it be security, whether it be, layer 2, layer 3, whatever it is that you're going to do, there's a lot more things to it. That's why you need a team of IT people to create an enterprise network. Not just one person can do it. They maybe could, but they'll be a very busy individual. They'll be working 70, 80, 90 hours a week just to keep the enterprise network running. If you're running an enterprise, it means you have branches around the world. So you're also taking care of a wide area network. All right, so now we need to take care of wide area network protocols. So these are the things that Ethernet, okay, tells us, hey, these are the things that you could do. This is how you would do it. These are the cables you need to use. It doesn't tell you the type of configurations. This is something you should know. All right, these are the things that books tell us, hey, you should configure these things for these purposes. And this is how we try to do it. All right, so this is what would consist of a very, very, very common basic enterprise LAN configuration. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, everybody. Now we're going to get into Ethernet cabling standards. We just talked about that, the importance of it very briefly. All right. Obviously, here it gives you a slew of all the cabling standards, right? 10 base 2, 10 base 5, coaxial cabling, thin net, thick net, not used anymore. Back in the days of the bus topology and all that good stuff. All right, Cat 3, definitely not used anymore. So we start with Cat 5. And obviously we have Cat 6 now, which goes 1,000 megabits per second. Okay, 100 meters. That's nice. Fiber optics, a lot nicer. We have single mode, dual mode. All right, 2 kilometers. All right, or less. Then we get into the TX, UTP, or STP. And let's talk about that real quick. Unshielded twisted pair and shielded twisted pair. What is the difference? Unshielded twisted pair is just the jacket and the 4 bare copper wires, or the 4 pairs of copper wires. Okay, and they're twisted together. You don't twist them, you put them in the correct order, whether it be 568A or 568B. You put them in the order they're supposed to be, so you can put them into the connector. All right, make sure that the jacket's all the way inside the connector. Right, so when you're crimping it down, make sure that those gold tips, you're able to see the gold tips on the very top, that the plastic teeth of the connector is actually crimping or holding on to the jacket, the actual plastic jacket that goes over the copper wires. The way somebody pulls on the cable, they're not going to, mess around or hurt the copper wire. They're very sensitive. Also, UTP is very sensitive to any kind of EMI or RFI. So when you're running these type of cables, according to the Ethernet or IEEE standards, you must run them at 90-degree angles. You just can't say, hey, throw me this cable over here. And you just throw it over there. It doesn't matter which way you throw it. You just throw the cable over and under, electrical devices, water pipes. No. 90-degree turns, they need to be tie wrapped certain distances apart. Okay, meaning if you have a group, let's say 12 cables that you're running, they need to be tie wrapped. All right, those 12 cables every so often. All right, the standards will tell you that. And then as high as possible to the ceiling, meaning you may have to use J hooks to hook on those cables so it can be away from any electrical device, high voltage device, because it will cause interference. Do not go underneath any pipes. Everything goes over. You will be inspected. Okay, you will be inspected. We're talking real world now. You will be inspected, and if you do not pass the inspection, you have to run those cables all over again. Obviously, they'll tell you what's wrong, so you need to fix what's wrong. That's why cabling is so important. So if you're running unshielded twisted pair, it has a mind of its own. Any twisted pair cable has a mind of its own. It likes to get knotted up for whatever reason. So be very careful when you're running these cables. And when you are crimping them, those connectors, that they are properly crimped. If you're putting them in a wall plug, okay, make sure that the color code is correct. And when you're punching them down using a punch tool, that it caught correctly, and then you place the cover on it. If you're punching it into a patch panel, all right, make sure that that plastic that goes over, right, the plastic sheath that goes over those copper wires is as close as possible to where you're punching it into. All right, so again, due to interference with the cables themselves. The cable themselves will cause interference, will cause something called crosstalk, where information crosses over and causes that interference. So even though you can go 100 meters with UTP or STP, weigh your options there, okay, on how you want to do that. All right, when we're talking about, that's this one right here, 100 meters, 100 base TX, whether it be UTP or STP is shielded. Actually, the wires are shielded, and there's 2 layers of shielding that goes on there, but it's more expensive. Nobody uses it. And there's another one that's called screen shielded twisted pair, which just has a little screen that goes over the wire. All right, so it all depends how much money you want to spend. All right, it all depends on how much money you want to spend. Fiber optic, 2 strands, 100 megabits per second. Again, went from 10 to 100 to 2 kilometers still. Now really we're going to gigabit Ethernet, gigabit. Here we have, even though it says here 1000 base T, UTP Cat5, I've been told, yeah, we were able to do something to it and we were able to make it go to 1000. If you want to go 1000 megabits per second, you need Cat6. Not only because it will go 1000 megabits per second for sure, all right, but it also has a plastic rod that separates the cables inside it to minimize the amount of crosstalk. It is a thicker cable. The gauge of the wire is different. Okay, so if you're running Cat6, that will be the best way to go. Definitely your LAN will run. The difference is night and day. You'll be from 100 megabits per second to 1000 megabits per second, and you're reducing EMI and EFI. Okay, your backbones, if you're in a building, obviously may be copper. Okay, so you may want to look at thicknet. Okay, or if you can run fiber. If you do want to run any kind of twisted pair cabling, make it shielded, make it, everything is going to be run through a PVC. Okay, so you want to shield it as much as possible, right? Be from any kind of electrical device that be surrounding. You cannot have high voltage or low voltage, that's meaning networking cables, low voltage, together. They must be separate or you will run into problems and you definitely won't pass an inspection. So here are the ones that you need to know, all right? You need to know your 10 base T, your 100 base TX, all right? You need to know definitely your gigabit, all right? But again, and obviously you need to know your 568A and your 568B color codes. Because they like to ask the questions of the color code of the particular cables you're going to use. Just remember the standards, 568A and 568B. But I'll make this all available to you via some sort of document or presentation, what have you, that I'll upload so you can have it. All right. But believe me, Google has the answers to everything. You can always go in there, boom, find the little picture, and there you go. But I'll make it available to you in the lecture. Okay, so you can take a look at it. But again, you're not going to be drilled in the certification. Actually, I'm giving you more information than you actually need. All right, because in the certification, it's going to be very straightforward. Remember, you only got 90 minutes to answer a question. So that's normally from what I hear from students. And way back when, when I took it during the Flintstone era, it was just basically just that, color codes between crossover, straight through, rolled, things of that nature. That is it. But there you go. These are your cables. And always keep in mind, in a real world scenario, you have wiring closets, your main distribution facility and your intermediate distribution facility. Okay? They could be called something different now. They could be called different in different companies. Just be aware of that, but that's not going to be on your test. See you in the next one. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the summary of this particular section. So let's see what we've talked about. We've talked about in detail about small office network types, what type of devices you would use, what type of configurations you may want to use, okay, and who would use them. Anyway, I told you mine, what I used to do. Enterprise network types definitely takes a lot more, doesn't it? A lot more configuration, okay, for security, for anything. All right, you're gonna have a lot more devices you're gonna have to deal with. That's why it's not just one person handling everything. You just can't have one person trying to handle the whole shebang, because an enterprise network is not just one building. It may be a 150-floor building across all 50 states or across the globe. So you need a team of individuals per building to take care of what it is you need to take care of. Now, not only are you taking care of a LAN, but you're also taking care of a WAN. And we all know that help desk is the most grueling job of all, okay? And then we looked at the different Ethernet cabling standards, all right, that you're going to see in your certification, but we also threw some other stuff in there, like the IDFs and the MDFs, all right, the 568A and the 568B standards, which are the color codes for your straight through, crossover, or rolled cables. That normally, that's what they're going to ask you. And again, this documentation will be made available for you. All right, but just know this right here, the cabling, you're not going to get drilled on it. Some questions that I would put, I mean, if I was, like back when I was in the college, I would say, okay, hey, you're trying to connect these two buildings together. What type of cabling would you use? Well, first comes to mind, hey, what distance, how far apart are these buildings? And then, hey, I'm going outdoors. I'm not going to use UTP cabling. And if I use shielded twisted pair cabling, and really using coaxial, yeah, it's good for interference, but how far can it go? 500 meters? What if I'm more than 500 meters? So fiber optic would be the obvious choice. So things like that. Things like that is what you may see. I don't know. You may see. But as far as the other ones, yes, know your 568A and your 568B standard, the color codes, the pinouts, you should know what they are. All right, so that's what we went over. So look at it, memorize it. I'll see you in the next one.